In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends and products creating a buzz here in China. On today's show, we'll discuss the suffocating pollution that continues to envelop Beijing and the market for canned air that's emerged. January has been a dark month for Beijing. With a thick haze covering the city for much of the month, the winter sun is usually visible only as a muddy orange smudge on the skyline. Beijing's chronic pollution problems made international headlines the weekend of January 12th when the city was struck by levels of pollution almost unheard of in history. That weekend, a combination of car exhaust, industrial emissions, coal-burning stoves, and a total dearth of wind combined to plunge Beijing into a crisis dubbed airpocalypse by the foreign media. Pollution readings were far off the scale established by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the Chinese government and media finally acknowledged that the euphemistically dubbed fog was in fact dangerous and potentially deadly air pollution. After a weekend that saw sharp rises in heart attacks and respiratory illnesses for Beijing residents, wind gradually blew the cloud of pollution out of the city. But that respite proved temporary, and in the weeks since, Beijing has been consistently covered in heavy pollution deemed hazardous by international measures. Toward the end of the month, extreme pollution returned, once again sending readings off of international scales. But for all that gloom and doom, more than a few people have seen the smog as an opportunity to generate publicity and make money. High-profile philanthropist Chen Guangbiao took center stage last week when he began selling and giving away cans of allegedly fresh air to Beijing residents. The cans were initially sold for 5 yuan, around 80 cents, and were said to contain air from pristine climates such as Tibet and Taiwan's Treasure Island. Last week, Chen took to Beijing's Finance Street to give away the cans to passers-by. Fairfax Media quoted Chen as saying that he wanted to raise awareness over environmental issues, warning, quote, "After 20 or 30 years, our children and grandchildren might be wearing gas masks and carrying oxygen tanks." Chen is a flamboyant publicity hound who has made headlines for similar stunts that combine national news, a little bit of charity, and a lot of flair. In one high-profile stunt, the man dressed himself in a green suit and gave away domestically produced Chinese cars to people who'd seen their Japanese cars destroyed during anti-Japan riots. With his latest stunt, Chen claims to have given away 230,000 cans of fresh air, along with 23,000 environmentally friendly bags. With less publicity and more in the way of profits, other breathing-related businesses have boomed since the smog descended. One foreign-owned store that sells air purifying machines and masks reported a surge in sales to local Chinese customers. The high-tech equipment had previously catered primarily to expats living in Beijing, and the store owner says more and more Chinese customers are snapping up the air purifiers and the high-end masks that filter pollutants. The owner now keeps waiting lists for popular items as manufacturers can't keep up with the demand in recent days. Chinese netizens have hit the web to comment on everything from the canned air phenomenon to the long-run trade-off between economic development and environmental protection. Recently, China's Vice Minister for Environmental Protection told the country to be prepared for a prolonged war on pollution, one that may equal the 30 to 50 years that it took Western countries to solve pollution problems. In response, one netizen took him to task for the double standard. Quote, "The authorities always take the same tone. When imposing requirements on the people, they point to international standards. But when making demands on themselves, they point to the gap between China and developed countries. If you really want to learn from developed countries when solving air pollution, do you dare take on state monopolies like the 3 major oil enterprises? Do you dare apply international standards to gasoline with overdoses of sulfur? Do you admit you're following the same old road as developed countries by polluting first and cleaning up later?" Another netizen relayed the torture of breathing Beijing's air. "I just went out for half an hour and felt a choking sensation in my chest from breathing the dirty air. People flocked to buy imported milk powder after the domestic safety scandal, and we can expect canned air to be next up. Dear customer, where would you like your air from? The time when people have to pay for breathable air is coming." One netizen specifically praised Chen Guangbiao's efforts with the canned air. "With the pollution so bad in Beijing, I just lost my voice again right after recovering it. Living in this air made me think of Chen Guangbiao and the canned air he sells. I could go for a few cans right now. Is breathing really going to end up as some kind of extravagant dream from now on?" Finally, one poster made the big picture connection between pollution and economic development. He wrote, "China's GDP is now second in the world, but serious air pollution is an indisputable fact. I just want to ask, what's all this economic development for?" With personal consumption levels and pollution both soaring to new heights, that's the big question, the hard question that Chinese people and the government are going to have to grapple with.